code. I laugh when I think about how to define infrastructure as code. It's infrastructure as code. It's kind of very self-explanatory. But anyway, just a little bit about myself just quickly. I did enterprise Java for almost 20 years, and then I did Python for 1 year. And in that time, I got heavy into CDK. The company I was at was a huge fan of infrastructure as code, and we got into CDK in a big way. And that's kind of where I cut my teeth on it, and it was a very good experience. So firstly, I want to cover, for those of you who maybe don't use infrastructure as code and haven't really got experience with it, why does one want to use infrastructure as code? And the easy way to answer that question is to consider, would you work for a company that doesn't use source control? That's kind of, you don't even have to talk about that anymore. You don't have to have discussion about that. That's just assumed we use source control. And furthermore, we arguably probably have a branch in the source control that is the production branch. So we know what code is where, right? Let me just, before I continue, I just want to, I need to just present to view there. That's what I want to do. Okay. So I can see my notes. Okay. So we don't have to you don't have to sort of question whether we use source control anymore. Everybody uses it. I would not want to work for a company that emails the code around. We don't do that anymore. And also we use production branches. So this is not really a question anymore. And the point is that infrastructure as code means managing your infrastructure in the same way that you manage the code, so that you've got predictability, you've got traceability. You know exactly what is deployed on your infrastructure. You know exactly what's there. You know its history. You know who made the change, when the change was made. And if you want to redeploy, you just click the button and redeploy. You don't have the situation where you've got the server and you made all these changes on the server and you don't know what the changes are, which is what happens if we don't use source control. How do we know what is deployed? How do we know who deployed it? How do we know where the bug came from? So that's fundamentally what it is. And the other thing that I've noticed in recent times, especially if you work on AWS, and I think on the other cloud platforms as well, is that the line between infrastructure and code is becoming very blurred. You know, you've got queues, you've got topics, you've got all sorts of things. In AWS, you've got step functions. They are technically infrastructure, but they're not infrastructure, are they? They're much, much more than just tin, much, much more than just virtual machines that you plonk an application on. So that's the point, right? It's fundamentally that you treat your infrastructure in the same way you treat your code, with all the good stuff that comes from that. Okay, so when you come to infrastructure as code, you get two different flavors, two different approaches to building infrastructure, building the code that defines the infrastructure. The one way is declarative. Now, the easiest way to explain declarative is to look at English. Here's a declarative sentence. The dog jumped over the fence. So it's kind of describing what happened. So if you work in computer, in programming parlance, state of dog equals over the fence. Okay? So that's kind of declaring the state of the dog. And if you used SQL, SQL is a poster boy declarative thing. You say, select from this table where this equals that. I don't care how you do it, just do it. So declarative tends to not go to the how, but go to the what. And the first sort of first cut of all the infrastructure as code approaches is to use declarative language like YAML, like JSON, like XML. They're all declarative. So that's the point, right? And even now on AWS, when you use CDK, the Cloud Development Kit, you will see that there's still a declarative cloud formation behind that. That's how Terraform is. That's how all the other guys, Azure, Google, all use declarative approach. Mostly YAML, some of them use JSON. And then you move on to the imperative approach. Now, all the coding language that we're used to using, they are imperative. Now, that same dog over the fence, in imperative would be like this. Dog, run to fence. Jump over fence. Run on from fence. So in other words, you give instructions to the dog. to tell a dog exactly what to do. And that's typically your programming languages, Python, JavaScript, TypeScript, C#. They're all imperative. They kind of tell the computer what to do. Not, yeah, it's kind of a very different, it's a different perspective. And code is by definition imperative. Well, these languages are by definition imperative. But when you start using CDK, you'll realize that it's kind of using an imperative approach to create declarative stuff, but you get all the advantages of using code to do things. And you'll see some of those advantages later, what I mean by that. So that's the point, right? XML, YAML, JSON, SQL are all declarative. Okay, so now we're going to go to a demo. What I'm going to do with this demo is I'm going to show you how to create a very simple, we're going to create a very simple piece of infrastructure. We're going to have it in AWS, because this is kind of CDK Cloud Development Kit is an AWS thing. And we can get later into how the other cloud providers are grappling with the same concept. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a topic. So a topic is a thing that you can subscribe to, really, and you can send messages to it. And then you can register on the topic different listeners. What we're going to do is you create a topic and we're going to register a queue in it. And we're going to do it with a traditional console approach. Then we're going to do it with the CloudFormation, and then we're going to do it with the CDK. And we're going to see how it changes. All right. So what I've done here is I've created, I've registered myself let me just refresh this. I've registered myself free accounts on AWS, okay? And I'm going to go to SNS, that's the simple notification service. And I'm going to create a topic. So I've already created a topic here. I wonder if this is my topic. Let's just delete this topic then. I don't want this topic to be around, because I want to show you how to create this thing from scratch. Okay, so we're going to create topic, and we're going to give it a name. No, not FIFO. No, we don't want a FIFO topic. Definitely not. My topic. Okay, and then we need to leave everything else default. Now you can even see already that I could, by the slip of a key press, I might do something wrong. I might click on something that I was not supposed to click on, and I've messed it up. You know, it's very, very error prone, this way of doing things. Then we're going to go to SQS. Sorry, my WhatsApps are still coming through, but anyway, you just have to put up with them. Now I'm going to go to SQS. Sorry, I need to delete this queue because this is clearly didn't clean up after I did my testing. Okay, so now we're going to create a queue, and we're going to call it my queue. So what we're going to do here is we're going to register the queue on the topic. Now, with a queue in AWS, it'll obviously receive stuff, and then you can register your apps to listen to it. So if you want to send a message to you want to spray a message like you do with a topic, this is what you would use. Okay, so then we're going to leave everything else default. As you can see, there's quite a lot of config, and there's a whole lot of other stuff, but we're not worried about that. We just, oh, okay, let's just give it a different name because we deleted the other queue so recently. We're going to give it a different name. We're going to call it another queue. You can see there's a message down there telling me I'm not allowed to delete it. I've got to wait 60 seconds. But yeah, there's the create queue. Okay, so now we have a queue that's been created. You can see another queue is there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the queue and I'm going to register the queue on the topic. So here we're going to go, there you go. There's a big orange button, subscribe to Amazon SNS topic. So we're going to choose my topic. There's my topic. You see that's the name, and I'm going to click save. Okay, now the topic is the topic is registered. Now to prove that things are working, I just want to let me just make another tab here. Let me just move that out of the way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the topic and I'm going to send a message on the topic so that you can see the message come through. So we know that things are good, and then we're going to go and have a look at what is actually done. Okay, so we're going to select my topic, and we're going to go, oh boy, let me just move this out the way, put it on the other screen, publish message, and we're going to give it a subject. This is my message. And we're going to see it because we're going to go here, hello from me. Okay, right, so we're going to send that off. Okay, so that's been sent off. Now we're going to go to the queue. Let's just see now, refresh here. Oh, Did we subscribe? We did subscribe. Publish message, my topic, publish message. Where is the message? Where's the queue? Send receive, go here. Okay, well, I'm not 100% sure why this is not working, because the subscription is there. You got this internet subscription. Let's try that. Let's try sending that topic, that message again. Publish message. Hello. Hello. Message body. Publish message. It's my topic. Message published to topic successfully. And then there's a subscription. And it is definitely registered, but it does not seem to be, there's no messages available. Well, anyway, we're going to have to just move on. You're going to have to just believe me that this is working. But the point is, the demo is not to show you topics and listeners in action. The demo is to tell you how to set something up on the console. All right. Now we're going to switch over to deploying the same thing and showing you an example of how the same thing would work or look like in CloudFormation. All right. So here's an example of a CloudFormation template. This is declarative. You can see you've got, you specify your queue, you specify a bunch of properties of it, your visibility timeout. You might be able to recognize those things. I probably can't, I was too fast. But the point is there's your queue, there's your topic, there's your subscription. And then the important thing is that there's this queue policy which allows permissions, allows the queue to talk back to the topic, to talk to the queue. Now, this is the problem with using CloudFormation. You need to know a lot about Amazon and what's required. So if you were to just say, I need a, you know, what we just did now in the console, we just clicked subscribe and it all works. But if you're using CloudFormation, you need to know, oh, I also need a queue policy. I need to give permission for the topic to send to the queue. Now you need to know that, and you need to manually set that up. That's what makes CloudFormation really challenging, because it's declarative. You've got to declare absolutely everything that you want done. There isn't any way for it to help you in that along those lines. Okay, so I've got this command ready to go. Are we going to deploy this guy? We're going to deploy this puppy, and we're going to go to Amazon, and maybe we can do a test on this queue and see if it works, but I'm not going to necessarily waste time doing that. Okay, so this is a very, very simple, excuse me, my daughter just wants to say goodnight. Good night, my darling. Okay. Good night. Have a good night. Thank you, my darling. I love you too. All right, so waiting for stack create. Okay, the stack is done. Let's go and have a look at it. CloudFormation. And here's my demo stack. Let's go and have a look at that fella. And you should see lots of what you see in the CloudFormation. You'll see here. You can see there's the queue, and there's the policy. There's this, what's that one? The subscription. You can see the subscription and the topic. Now you'll probably see a one-to-one mapping relationship between the stuff in here and the stuff you deployed, because it's verbatim, kind of, you told us exactly what to do. Okay, so that's an example of using CloudFormation to deploy stuff. And that's what you would do. Now, what you can also do is, obviously, you can then do a call to delete that. If you've changed it, it'll figure out what you've changed, and it'll do take the appropriate measures to update it. Excuse me. Okay, so now we're getting to the interesting thing. Now we're going to see how it works with CDK. Now, before we actually deploy it, I just want to show you a little bit of the code to see what you need to do here. Now, this is what's going to start getting interesting, in that there's the topic. You can see the topic, and there's the queue, and there's the subscription. And you can see this is just normal TypeScript. Nothing untoward. There's just libraries that you can just do normal code. For developers, it's a very comfortable, easy sort of segue into building cloud stacks, right? So now we're going to deploy this. Now, this is very nice because I can go back in the history and I can just click, come on. Now, notice what you don't see there. There's no role. There's no permissions requirement. Not AWS CDK, but CDK. There's no permissions requirement. And that's one of the biggest secret sources of using the CDK is because it's code, there's a place that they can put that kind of thing. So they know that when you go topic.add subscription, that you need to also add a permissions between the topic and the queue or whatever you're subscribing. And because it's a code library, there's some place to put that information. And you'll see later how rich that can get. It's quite incredible how much you can add there. So now we've deployed that. It's all done. Let's go and have a look at what we've done. So now there should be a third stack, sample app demo stack. There you go. And that is now deployed with CDK. And obviously it's the same as what we did, but the point is there's no need to do the queue policy. That's the one, the permissions, because in the background, the CDK did that for you. Notice how also that the names are sort of randomized. They could sort of use the name that you give them and then they randomize it after that. Where's the, so you can see there's my name, sample app demo topic, sample app queue. And here you have the same things. Now, let me just show you quickly. I can just go CDK destroy and the whole thing will disappear. So that's kind of, it's a lovely, quick, simple, just deploy, destroy. If you've made any changes, it'll figure it out. And the point is that in the background, I actually suspect it's calling the same APIs because CDK generates you a bunch of cloud formations, and when it's finished deleting, I'll show you the cloud formation that CDK is generating. It's you use the CDK synth. This is a node app, right? You install it with npm. You install the CDK with npm. It's a node app. Is that what it is? It doesn't have to be. It actually has to be npm. I think. I don't think you can use. Maybe you can use yarn. Maybe somebody else more clever than me can tell us. Tell us if you can use yarn. But anyway, the point is you just install it. You do have to have the AWS CLI installed. Okay, I'm just going to make a new terminal so I can get a move on here. Sample app demo, and I'm going to go CDK synth. Okay, so here we have, let me just make this a bit bigger. Notice how it's generated me a CloudFormation template with a lot of similarities to the text-based one. The reality is I cheated to build the text-based one. I used the CDK to generate it because I wasn't going to sit there trying to figure out how to use CloudFormation. That's just too complicated. When I first started using infrastructure as code, I spent ages and ages trying to get CloudFormation to work, and having to really learn so much about the policies and about permissions and about all these kind of things. And then when I was, discovered CDK, the whole world opened up for me, and it was wonderful. So that's the point, right? In the background, it's probably still using CDK, CloudFormation. So now that the thing is gone, all the different constructs have disappeared. Okay. Right, so let's go back to our presentation. Here, so we've got demo, we've got manual deployment. You notice how we do manual deployment. You can already see the challenges of manual deployments. Imagine if that was a sort of a production app that you deployed, and it was much more complicated than that. You make some fix to fix something, and then something goes wrong, and the next guy comes along and says, "What was changed? I have no idea." That is the weakness with this. There's tooling in AWS that can help you. There's CloudTrail, which sort of tracks all the changes that you made to your whole environment. But there are lots and lots of these little steps, and finding the rogue one is going to be very hard. Okay, so then you've got the CloudFormation deployment, which deploys that manually created YAML template. And then you've obviously got the CDK deployment. Those are the three things we went through. So now that we've done a bit of a demo on CDK and how does it look and how does it compare to CloudFormation and to manual, let's look at actual CDK in more depth. So this is Why exactly CDK? Why imperative? So all the advantages that imperative has over declarative. If you've ever gone from a YAML-based config to a code-based config, you'll notice that you just click the dot and all the methods just pop out, you know? You've got that IntelliSense, you've got code insight, you've got all those things that you're used to getting for code. And you've got code reuse, and of course, like I said, you've got those extra behaviors. So in the CDK version, there was nothing, you didn't have to worry about the queue policy. There was a place to put that in the code. In the CDK library, that code will be there to actually pull that off. And then the other thing is you've got your familiar environment, your familiar IDE, you don't have to learn something new. And of course, you've got methods, variables, inheritance. You can call a method twice with different parameters. You want to create the same queue, multiple, you know, say, create a similar queue with a different name. You know, you can reuse that kind of thing. And you can also, yeah, so that's the point. And of course, you've got type checking. There's you know, if you make an error, it'll tell you, oh, this, you can't do that. You know, you've got all those things that you're used to getting with code. There's, you know, need I go on? We know why we want to use code, TypeScript or Python or Java to do our config rather than use XML or JSON or YAML. All right, so some details. So CDK was originally developed in TypeScript, and that's still the case. If you want to contribute to CDK, then TypeScript is your language. And then they've used something very funky called the JSII to generate C#, Java, and Python sort of versions of that code. It's really cool when you get into it and you see that there's this amazing tool because in Python it subscribes to all the Python conventions. You know, the snake case, the different naming, the different you know, the snake case and all that kind of thing. It really is very well done, and using the sort of the idiomatic things that Python give you, that C# give you, and that Java give you. So in Java, you'll notice that there's lots of builders. They use lots of builders. C# use lots of anonymous classes. I think that's what they are. I've used my tool of choice for the CDK was Python, and then I also contributed to the CDK source code, and then I obviously use TypeScript. It is arguably better to use TypeScript because you can test better, and you're kind of closer to the tin. I don't necessarily think it's mandatory that you use TypeScript, but there is a few advantages. And of course, if you want to contribute, it's very easy because you can just do that. You can just build it in the same language you're working in. So that's quite a nice thing about TypeScript. And if you're a fan of Go, there's a developer preview for Go. Obviously, all that needs to be done is the new bindings need to be created. There are some sort of ramifications, if I may use that word, of using this JSII and using this sort of translation system. They try to be quite conservative with what features they use in TypeScript. There's certain reasons you might wonder why they've done it this way and not that way. They've kind of not do it in the most efficient way in terms of the API itself. And the reason for that is they want to make sure that all the languages are supported. When I was heavy into CDK and I asked the devs on the CDK GitHub, that's what they mentioned to me. I do want to say that it's a very friendly place to contribute, and we'll get to that area a bit later. Okay, so now I want to go take you through a more complex example. What is the other? Let me take you through a more complex example. Let's go here, and now we've got where is it? Yeah. So what I did is I pulled down a bunch of examples from one of the GitHub repos, and this is an Ec2 instance. We're going to create an Ec2 instance. Open an integrated terminal, and I'm going to go AWS, I'm going to get CDK deploy. Oof. What this one does, let's have a look. So what this is going to do is it's going to create an Ec2, and it's going to create a key pair. Now, if you've ever used Amazon AWS at all, you'll know that you need to create a key pair so that you can secure shell into your box. That is a private key that allows you to access the box. And what you need to do normally is reference an existing one when you create your Ec2 so that you can secure shell into it. So what CDK will do is always tell you a summary of the security changes that it's going to make sure that you're happy with them. And maybe it's, you know, just to be on the safe side. But as you can see down the bottom there, this is not an exhaustive list. So let's let it do that. And now, while it's doing that, I want to just take you through this code. So, let me just pop this down. So here we have it, right? We've got, there's the key pair itself. There's the VPC. So that you need to create a VPC. This is creating it from scratch completely. What you might do is, if there was an existing VPC, you would reference that VPC. Then you want to create a security group. Security group is what gives the sort of controls. It's like a firewall, effectively, and controls access to that EC2. And then you want to there's a bunch of other stuff. I'm not 100%. This is so that you can get at the image that you're going to use. And then you want to create the EC2 from an existing image. And then this is the actual EC2 itself. So it's a T3 micro. And so and there's the key name. And then what it allows you to do in this case is it allows you to pull in a shell script to be run at startup. So that's what it's going to do. Now, while it's busy, what I want to do is I want to show you, where is it now? EC2 instance. Open an interactive terminal. Cdk Synth. Now this is going to be quite something. So look at this. Look at the CloudFormation template that little piece of code has actually generated. That's a pretty hefty piece of CloudFormation. So, and when it's finished, we're going to take you through the details. So it's quite a big one. It obviously has to actually create an EC2 while it's busy doing it. Let's actually go to where is it here? Let's go to here and have it and watch it. Here's my EC2 CDK stack. Here it is there, and I'm going to go to the events. So now it's busy doing it. It's got quite far, but there's probably, is it actually created the EC2 yet? I don't know if it has. It looks pretty good. It's creating progress on the instance profile. Okay, let's just wait for that to finish. Where were we on the presentation? Yeah, more complex example. What do we have next? Okay, we're going to go to drawbacks and disadvantages next. So let's just let that thing finish. So the key thing is, in fact, while you add it, let me actually go and have a closer look at this thing and see what is actually doing. Let's just go here. So there's the key pair. There's the manage policy. I'm looking at these things here, the tops, and there's a role, and there's a Lambda function. How the hell did where did the Lambda function come from? I didn't put a Lambda function in my code. But you see, it's this key pair here. It actually deploys a Lambda function in order to create that key pair. So you have a lot of freedom with CDK to add very sophisticated constructs in order to build up what it is that you're actually creating. In a very little piece of, as you can see, it's just a little piece of key pair here becomes the whole giant, not a monolith, but a lot of CloudFormation. So you can actually define a lot in a very small space of time. So there's done now. Let's go and have a look at what it's done. So it's got our CDK stack. Let's go to services and go to EC2. And we're going to go to the dashboard in EC2 and see what has it actually done. So here's my instance that it's created. My instance is running, my T3 micro. And I'm going to go take you to lambdas. And it's created a lambda as well. There's my lambda. That's the lambda to actually create the key pair, to make API calls to create the key pair. That's what I think it's doing. I assume so. And you can see this is there's a lot of code here. There's a lot of TypeScript code. It's actually JavaScript, sorry. But there's a lot of code here. So in a very short space of time, you've created a huge lambda. But you don't even know that because you just want to use the key pair functionality. Okay, so where were we? Let's go back to our presentation, and we're going to go a bit further. So they want to make you understand the power of the CDK. If you were to do that with CloudFormation, it would almost, I don't know if you would bother. The complexity of it would be just too much. And somebody else, the clever people around the world that contribute to the CDK, and the Amazon guys that contribute to the CDK have done this for us. They've built this construct, and it's a very vibrant community. I've actually submitted a few pull requests myself because I needed some extra features. We're going to talk more about that a little bit later. Okay, So what are the drawbacks or the disadvantages? What could be, if you talk to somebody about this, it just sounds amazing. Well, there's a couple of things to be aware of. So it's I would argue that CDK is quite mature. It's been going for a number of years, and there's a lot, and I'll put my bum on the line to say that there's lots and lots of mission critical production environments that are using CDK. But some of the newer sort of services in AWS may not be supported by CDK. When I started in using CDK back in 2019, for example, the DynamoDB was poorly supported in Python. Something was amiss with the way that they'd written the TypeScript such that the Python just didn't work. And I couldn't use, was it DynamoDB or was it step functions in DynamoDB? I think it was actually step functions into DynamoDB that wasn't supported. So if there's this new amazing feature of AWS that's been announced yesterday, it's almost certainly not going to be supported in CDK. It may already be supported in CloudFormation because CloudFormation is just spit out the templates. But it does take a little bit of time for the CDK feature to be added. But if you are hungry and you want it to do it today, well, go ahead and post an issue and then submit a pull request. It's actually it's quite a friendly place for newcomers to get to, because there's a lot of stuff that can be done. And I would, it's not just a scary place. Like I said, I have done some pull requests, and certainly it's a little bit better there now, but back then my TypeScript knowledge was very, very, very flaky, but I was able to submit some pull requests. And there are mitigations to that issue because there's this, in CDK, there are these low-level CloudFormation equivalent classes that you can potentially use if you want to. And there's this thing called a custom resource where you can do this sort of low-level stuff if you're desperate. And you can even import a existing CloudFormation and deploy that as part of your stack. So there are ways to sort of get around the fact that there's a lag. Yeah. So like I said, the CDK GitHub repository is very friendly to newcomers. Okay. And it is the future, in my opinion. It is the future of infrastructure as code, without a doubt. Okay. So now we're going to cover how do you migrate from a manual Snowflake? So Snowflake is the server sort of concept whereby if it goes down, you can't bring it back up. It's a Snowflake. Nobody knows how it was configured. It's been configured over many, many years. And now if you lose that configuration, it's done. That's what a Snowflake is. So migrating from manual or Snowflake to infrastructure as code, don't get me wrong, that's a big job. If you've got a lot of Amazon constructs and services, putting that onto CDK is not going to be easy. And it will absolutely be worth it, though. It was incredible to be able to just, I need a new environment to test this. CDK deploy, poof, everything happens. CDK destroy, poof, everything's gone. That was just amazing. And I remember when I was at the company that I did CDK on, I did a manual change, and I was like, whoa, this is scary. What's going to happen? How am I going to remember this? Or, it's just like, it felt wrong. It's like changing the code in production, going onto the production box and like changing a file. That's what it feels like when you've been using CloudFormation and this kind of infrastructure as code approach for a long time. I would say, though, that the biggest problem is not going to be the code side. It's probably going to be more challenging is actually being the change in culture. And some companies have gone so far as to make the console read-only, to try to sort of really make that hard rule that you may not change anything on the console. And there's various interesting ways to try and apply and sort of do that. And I do think that I'm hoping, and I do think that there's a conversation going in Amazon today to try to help that process, to put tooling in place to stop these manual changes happening on the infrastructure of the companies that are using it. Okay, let's see. But like I said, the advantages are obvious. I mean, the advantage of using source control over no source control, we don't even have to discuss that. And so it's pretty clear why we don't want to do that. And where my company before that is still massive amount of Snowflakes, massive amount of manual deploys. and I get messages say, what did I do wrong here? Yeah, you didn't make the SQL MySQL 8, or you did make the MySQL 8 when you created the database. Yeah, that's what you want to avoid. That's what you do avoid with CDK. And obviously, if you've got lots of customers and lots of accounts, there's another massive advantage using CDK, because you just click deploy and it replicates exactly as you want it to be. Now, migrating from CloudFormation. So CloudFormation is the YAML context, or maybe any declarative solution into a more imperative solution. I want to say that before you even begin that, carefully consider whether this is necessary, because if you are seasoned CloudFormation users, you have got incredible knowledge of AWS itself, and I don't know if the bang for your buck and the return on investment is worth it to migrate the existing CloudFormation templates. What I do want to say is that rather take the new stuff and put that onto CDK and leave the old deployments with CloudFormation. I have tried to migrate a CloudFormation template and I found it very difficult. That is primarily because CDK works at such a higher level than CloudFormation. It's like taking an assembly program and writing it as C++. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not impossible. And it's probably not quite as hard as taking an assembly language program and writing in C++, but it is certainly not an easy thing to do. But you can try and do it incrementally. As I said, redo the CloudFormations in CDK where you can, and whatever new stuff you have, put that into CDK. So then it's worth talking about what some of the alternatives are, because of course we're not all on AWS. We're not all using, can't all use the CDK from AWS. Well, Terraform has something called the CDK TF, CDK for Terraform, which is the same concept, but against the Terraform context. And some people like Terraform, some people don't. It has advantages, it has disadvantages. That is, I can't remember the details of that, but it'd be very simple for you to just Google that and you can get more details on that. I don't remember the details. Is that a custom language? Does it also support the multiple platforms, et cetera, et cetera? Now from Azure, the tool of choice and for CDK is, for the CDK approach, the imperative approach is something called Bicep. Now that's quite interesting because that's a DSL. That's actually a new language, which is really interesting. They've said, we're going to create a new language, and I appreciate that in one sense, because it means it can be very efficient. It can be very good at writing what they call Azure resource management templates, ARM templates in a nutshell. Sort of what the existing CloudFormation is, or sort of say what the existing YAML is. I think they use JSON. I mean, YAML and JSON can be sort of translated between each other. So whether it's JSON or YAML makes no difference. But the point is that is a DSL, a new language. And then there's something really interesting called Pulumi, which is quite impressive. I had a quick look at it, and it is a huge tool, and it supports all the cloud services. And go and have a look at that if you're on Google Cloud. And I actually think, I think that somebody on the CDK Slack pointed out that that's probably the way GCP is going to go, given how they've done the other integrations. Like they partnered with Elasticsearch to offer Elasticsearch. So I don't think they're going to try to reinvent the wheel to do an imperative approach to GCP. They're probably going to sort of support and contribute to the Pulumi project. That is my presentation, and any questions or comments that you may have, we can go to those now.
Fantastic. Wow. Thank you, Michael. That was awesome. I'm going to hand over to John to direct us through the Q&A.
Questions. Cool. Thanks. Yeah, so we have 2 questions today. I mean, so far, which makes my job so much more easier. But the first question by
sorry, John. Sorry, just before you start, I just want to remind everyone, there are a ton of links in the chat. So one of them is a Q&A link. So please go there, and whatever Michael, not going to have a chance to like just verbally stick your hand up and ask questions. So this is it. Please put your questions in that vbox.app link. And then that's also tied to competition. And there is the offers in t-shirt link. So there are 2 offers in links. The one is for the t-shirts, the type form, they're both they're both type form. The one is for the Dev Nation survey. So if you haven't done that, you can also get a t-shirt potentially. So please do that survey. But yeah, so there's 2 offers and swag links. One is a survey that will take 30 minutes, 20 minutes. The other one is really quick. Yeah, and the Q&A, and then there's the coffee raffle and the JetBrains for the Trapetto link. So just take note of all those links, please. Okay, over to you, John.
Cool. Do you mind if I share my screen with the questions on, Michael?
Yes, sure.
Cool. Give me a sec. Just let me know if you can see my screen.
So should I just go from the top?
Yeah, so we'll start at the bottom because it's most recent, so it might be a bit.
So your execution failure is a really challenging thing to deal with in CDK because the errors that you get back are pretty nebulous. It's not very helpful. That is not a problem. That is not the thing you have to realize is that's not CDK's fault. That's CloudFormation's fault almost certainly. You know, they are not going to tell you, oh, you can't put an ARM a x64 image against an ARM EC2, for example. They're just going to tell you error in the configuration. But and yeah, it is a challenge. It is a fair point though that it will get as far as it can and then it'll stop. And then once you fix the issue, but typically when it stops, it actually deletes everything. It's going to roll back. That's that's the CloudFormation approach. So if you want it to not stop and to sort of go, so what you can do is you can just delete a whole lot of constructs in your CDK code and then deploy half of it. That does work. And then from then on, iterate trying to fix the next bit. So that's kind of what a strategy that you can employ. I spent a lot of time trying to deploy an ECS with CDK, and it was very, very hard because it kept erroring and it would delete the whole shebang. And then what would happen is it would get into the screwed up state that I had to go and manually delete the thing. It doesn't always roll back successfully. So yeah, that is a challenge. It's not easy. It's not always easy to restart from the same exact point. Another technique is to break your infrastructure into multiple stacks, which you can do with CDK and CloudFormation. Not so much CloudFormation, but CDK. You have your sort of parent stack as your baseline, and then your child stack sort of add to that. Should I do? Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So the second question is more for a complete beginner. What's the best place to start learning about infrastructure?
Let me just, while we're even here, can I just share my screen again quickly?
Go for it.
Where's share screen here? Share screen. Oh no, have you okay, go there, desktop, yeah, share. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna make the CDK temp, and I'm gonna go CDK init. Now that's not gonna, yeah, there you go. Right, so, oh no, so it tells you what do you want to do. I want a sample app. So once you've got the CDK installed, then you just come here and you can say, what language do you want? I want to deploy it with Python. Wow, JavaScript. Okay, oh no, it needs to be run in an empty directory. Let's just cd to my CDK temp folder and do that. Okay, so now it's actually created myself. It's going to create me a very basic CDK environment for me to start playing around in. You can see there's all the stuff, and if you look at it would be in app.py, and there's our, no, that's the app, but the actual code is in, where's the actual code? Is in CDK temp. Is in CDK, there it is, yeah. So that, okay, so now it's deployed you that same sample that we looked at earlier, but in Python. So that's kind of an obvious way to start CDK, is just to go CDK init and then start deploying, and register yourself on Amazon with a free account, which I've done for this demo. If you keep everything in the free tier, you won't pay anything, but you do need to supply a credit card, I guess, in case you do incur charges and they want to make money. But yeah, that's kind of the thing to do. I'm not sure where to go to get sort of tutorials and that kind of thing. I think what I'd suggest you do is take a project-based approach to learning. So tell yourself, what do you want to deploy in Amazon, and sort of fight with that and get that deployed. Sort of take a real world example and move from there. Let me stop sharing.
Thanks. The next question is from Hendrik. What about non-public cloud like Proxmox, LibVit, and etc.?
So I can't really comment on the non-public clouds in terms of CDK. I mean, the first port of call is, do they even support infrastructure as code? And I know that things like Puppet and Chef and that kind of thing kind of do the similar work in a similar area as far as I know, but I don't really know enough to say anything intelligent and to answer that question.
Oh, thanks. Next question from Alex. So I worry that AWS will spin up all these services in a background that will end up charging me an arm and a leg. Is this a valid concern? Or do you have to explicitly define each chargeable service?
So in a nutshell, that is a valid concern. You go into Twitter or wherever, or the internet, and you search for cost shock or charge shock, and you'll get some really serious horror stories. Some guys, forgot to do this or do that, or they didn't realize that it was going to cost them an arm and a leg, and they got charged, thousands of dollars. Amazon tends to be fairly, sympathetic towards the plight of penniless developers when this happens. So what the normal stories that you read about these stories, and they say, I pled my case to the sort of the powers that be, and they did give me a sort of a discount or a significant. They just remove the charges. The strength of the CDK though is that what you can deploy it, and then when you finish with it, you can easily destroy it. You don't have to go and search and destroy for things in your console. So that's the big win with using CloudFormation or infrastructure as code in general, in terms of charging, because you can only you know exactly what you deployed, and you know exactly what you need to delete. But it's not a simple thing to the key sort of the only advice I can give you is deploy something and watch your build, and then the next, because it updates very quickly. It's up to date, like within even hour. I actually think it's up to date within hours. I'm not sure if it's more granular than that, but it tells you exactly how much you spent every day. So if your charge suddenly spikes, then okay, I've done something dodgy and I need to go and delete. And then you can go into that Cost Explorer, the Amazon Cost Explorer, and you can sort of group your things. And there's a whole science, and there's companies that have been created which business is to reduce costs for Amazon clients. So that's a huge sort of industry almost. And that whole Cost Explorer, getting that to work and figuring out tagging things appropriately and getting that thing nice. You can certainly filter by service fairly easily. So yeah, so that's kind of the advice there.
Cool, thanks. Question from Rowan. What if you've gone and configured tons of services manually? Is there a tool that can export?
Yeah, you're on a sticky wicket there. I'm afraid it's going to be very difficult for you to get to CDK itself. There are some tooling that you can get that can help you build CloudFormation templates, but there isn't an easy way to get them into CDK. There is really not an easy way. You're going to have to pay your school fees to pull that off. Yeah, the thing is, it's like the old, when we were back in the day, we were building web services, and the shortcuts were to build the Java code or the whatever code, and then to generate the APIs from that, the web services definition language from that, and that never ended up with something that you actually liked. So you're not going to actually get nice, maintainable, well-designed CDK code if you try to reverse engineer what you've got already. The advice there is to pick something which is small and manageable, and to build the CDK around that, deploy the CDK, and then sort of move everything, or move to the new EC2. You could also reference the existing EC2 potentially. That's not recommended though. I wouldn't recommend doing that. Yeah, so there's no shortcut to migrating to CDK from existing manually configured services. I'll just go through them, the other questions. It sounds like you're enjoying your DevOps life more since using CDK. Absolutely, it's wonderful. I tried CloudFormation and it was horrible. And then I discovered CDK and it was amazing. Mitchell, I'm sorry, in the presentation, I clearly wasn't very clear. It is available in C#. It's available in C#, Java, TypeScript, and Python. And like I said, there's a preview version for Go. And I'm hoping, you know, the post I saw said go and vote and try and get your new next favorite language added. That post is kind of taken down, so I'm not sure whether how to get your new favorite language added. I'm not sure whether they are considering adding another one at this stage, to be honest. I think the efforts are going into sort of maturing the platform as a whole and just making it easy to use. I'm actually convinced, and I'm pretty sure that the guy that I spoke to who used to work at Amazon, he said that this is the way Amazon's going. You know, they're going to put all their eggs into the CDK boat. And it's interesting because I wonder what's going to happen with CloudFormation, whether they're still going to keep the CloudFormation thing in the way. That's an interesting question.
Next from Rowan, we have a second question from him.
To be honest, do people use things like Ansible and Chef with CDK? I think Ansible and Chef, I don't actually know enough about Ansible and Chef to do anything to say something intelligent there, to be honest. As far as I can tell, they work in different areas in terms of what they're actually trying to achieve.
Yeah, sorry, I thought about it more. It's kind of a silly question. Yeah, Ansible, it's like a SSH automation tool. That's what I think. You know, you can, whatever you can do with this SSH into a box and run on the box, you can do with Ansible. But it's a very similar thing because you also end up sort of coding what you're doing in Ansible.
And so I think CDK would be the one that you'd use to actually define the EC2 itself. You know, and then you would use Ansible and Chef to sort of manage the software running on it, which CDK doesn't really do. It doesn't really manage software running on the virtual machines itself.
Would people use CDK to like sort of deploy a Kubernetes cluster in?
Yes. Yeah, there's a whole sort of movement to deploy using CDK with Kubernetes. I'm not sure how far they are in that. And I don't know enough about Kubernetes even on Amazon to be able to comment intelligently. What I can say is I discovered a Slack workspace for CDK itself, and there's a channel for CDK Netes. I think it's CDK Kubernetes, CD8S or something. I can't remember what it's called, but it's there, and you can go and sort of, if you want more to find out more, then sign up to that forum and have a look.
Cool, thanks. Next question. Yes.
Yeah, I think basically I'm on the free tier at the moment, and
sorry, Michael, can you just read the question out? Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you're actually sharing your screen, but just read the question out.
No, it's fine, thanks. I'm new to coding, worrying about the secret bill for cloud services that devs keep talking about. What are your thoughts on AWS hidden costs for free tier? My thoughts is that I'm petrified of doing something that's not free. And so when I'm in experimental mode, I'm going to not leave anything running. I'm going to try not to leave anything running, and I'm going to try my level best to stay within the free tier. I don't have this. You can set up cost, what do they call it? Cost events. So if your costs suddenly spike, you can send an event. You can't set up AWS to say don't deploy anything that's not free. That as far as I know, you can't do that. So that's a bit unfortunate, but that's the reality we sit with. So my advice to you is just read carefully what the free tier allows you to do and try to stay within that, and watch your bill. So if your bill suddenly goes up by, well, if you get charged at all, it means that you've gone over the free tier. You know, it's a catch-22 on the coast of Amazon part. I kind of see their point of view. There's a commercial concern there that they've got. that they don't allow. And I think maybe that's too challenging for them to do. I don't know. You know, how do you tell a Lambda don't run? You know, if they don't have that plumbing in place, or any EC2, that plumbing in place, they're not going to add it just so that we can have a situation where we're not charged.
Cool. Hope that answers your question, Douglas. I think it's a question.
How much is AWS paying you for promoting them? Why not love for Azure? The reality is that what one does as devs is one sort of gets, you know, involved in the one that you've used, and you go deep on that one. You know, if you're on Azure, please learn to use Azure very well. Sweat it, get it working, get very familiar with what you can do with it, learn it incredibly well. And unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to use Azure in production, so I don't know enough about. I can't comment on Azure and etc. I can tell you about Amazon CDK, but I can't tell you about how Azure works. And I wish, well, there was a time when I wanted to work for Amazon, and I even went to an interview, but I don't work for them, and I don't think I ever will.
Yeah. Cool. I think we have one more question from Waldo. What aspects of CF don't you like, and what about CDK makes it better or easier in your opinion?
So the fundamental thing that I like about CDK is as I've alluded to already, when you're deploying on CloudFormation with CloudFormation, you've got to know exactly what you need to do. You know, you need to the low level stuff of what you need to do. So in the example, we created a topic and we created a queue, and we subscribed the queue to the topic. Now in CloudFormation, you would do that. You would go create the topic, create the queue, create a subscription, and then it wouldn't work. It won't work, and you scratch your head and you wonder why. Well, it's because there's a queue policy that needed to be added to let the topic talk to the queue. Without the queue policy, it ain't going to work. And so you're going to spend your time, your tires are going to be spinning, wondering why this thing is not working, because you have to know so much about what is required when you want to register a queue against a topic. Whatever you're doing, you have to know everything that needs to happen. You know, when we did it manually at the console, we just clicked subscribe and it subscribed, and it added the queue policy for us. We didn't even see that happen. So that's the big advantage with using CDK, and there's a place that can be put. So the devs who built CDK have now put that in place. So there's a queue policy that gets added as well, and that is what makes it easier to work with CDK as opposed to CloudFormation. There's other reasons as well. There's the fact that you can have variables, you can have methods, and you can call those methods more than once. You can have this sort of, you can even build libraries. You know, you can build out a bunch of utility libraries that you can reference from your CDK code. You know, if you know, that's the thing, right? And so you can't really do the CloudFormation. What you can do, CloudFormation, copy and paste. But then, of course, if it's a library, you can update it, and then all your dependent projects that use that library get the updates. Like if you want to change your something in your queues in all the different stacks, you just change the library, and all the source code stacks that use it will just get the change. So there's a lot of advantages with using code as opposed to imperative approach, which is code to code, as opposed to declarative approach, which is YAML, JSON, etc.
I'm thinking one big advantage of this is, imagine you had a UAT environment or automation environment that you want to run your automation tests against. If you coded your whole sort of prod environment with a CDK, you could spin up that test environment, run the tests, and switch it off again. And you're saving so much money instead of just having servers, right, running all the time.
Very much so. And you can even write tests for your CDK itself. Because you're actually using Python or using TypeScript, you can actually write tests to validate certain things about your CDK. Does it have this? Does it have that? And I watched a very good YouTube video today on why you should be testing. There's certain key instances which testing becomes really useful and very important. I did do some testing because I was in Python. The testing is much better if you're on TypeScript, as far as I understand, although that may have changed, but I was in Python and did actually write some tests. So like if you've got a very important piece of your CDK that you want to be there, then you can put that in the CDK, validate that the queue policy is this. Somebody comes along and says, "Ah, no, this queue policy, what a piece of rubbish, I'm going to change it." And then suddenly the test fails and the guy goes, "Oh, flip. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to do that." So you can actually add tests to your CDK itself.
We have a question from Alex. There's a CDK scale. It sounds like a great for a hobby project, but can it scale to heavy production loads?
The CDK, fortunately, because it's a deployment thing, doesn't really need a huge, doesn't really sort of have the scalability problems that applications have as such. And I would argue that the CDK, the CDK approach scales much better than the CloudFormation approach when it comes to managing your sort of infrastructure. And I've built very, very big applications with CDK, and I would argue that it scales very well. And there are limitations on how many resources you can put in a CloudFormation template, which you can reach. The CDK does lend itself to inheritance. So what you do is you try to break up your stacks into sort of smaller pieces, so that the video I watched today argued that your stack should change for only one reason. You need to sort of break up your application into smaller pieces so that you can manage them independently. And that is a good idea, because the less that you kind of deploy each time, the better. You've got this sort of more targeted, more smaller piece of code that you sort of, you're changing. So and CDK does lend itself to that, because what you can do is you can create multiple stacks and they can actually depend on each other. And CDK will just handle those dependencies for you out of the box, which CloudFormation won't do, because you have to manually export the parameters. So CDK will create the export parameters and reference them in the child stacks. And then of course, what we did at Lumkani, this is the place I use CDK, is we had our parent stack in a separate library to our child stacks. And so we could even make changes in the parent without even affecting the child. And then we would sort of update the parent, the reference, the dependencies, update the dependencies, then get the changes, etc., etc. So I would argue that it does certainly lend itself to scaling. But like I said, it's not quite the same sort of discussion, because it's not an application that you need to scale. It's more sort of a deployment side that you need to, that doesn't really subscribe to the same scalability challenges.
Thanks, Mike. Just one more question, and then we'll have to move on.
Okay. So the ironic thing is that I'm not a DevOps dev. I'm not. I wouldn't even at tier. I personally don't like. To me, if I'm a developer, I'm a developer where I'm DevOps or not. Sorry. I'll read the question. Michael, have you moved from developer to DevOps engineer for good? Sorry, I missed the intro bit. No, that's fine. It does sound like I'm a DevOps developer. I would not say I'm a DevOps developer. I think I would like to be a site reliability engineer. That'll be cool. But no, I'm not a DevOps developer. I don't really like the division of the two. Wherever I'm working, I want to do the world. I want to do the whole thing. I don't like this. I always get irritated by this fact that my destiny is in your hands. That's not my strength. Putting my destiny in somebody, sorry, I'm just going to close this. Putting my destiny in somebody else's hands is not a strength of mine. So I want to get involved in everything. And what's happening today is that, as I said to you, certainly on Amazon, not so much on other ones, I don't know how much on other ones, is that line between DevOps or development and ops. And obviously DevOps is sort of an amalgamation of the two. The line between development and operational when you're a cloud engineer is sort of very, very malleable. So there's not really a distinction anymore, I would argue, depending on the context, of course.
Cool, thanks. Sorry, there's just one more question that came through that I think we can quickly take from Ec2. Can you find that one?
Yes, I saw something.
Have we done that?
At what user financial scale do you switch to CDK AWS? My initial findings, it looks very expensive, even for simple applications. How big were the projects you use the CDK with? So you have a point in the sense that it does look expensive. So on the EC2 side, the rates are not quite as bad, or it's a bit more competitive. But when you look at things like database and managed, as soon as the service is managed, then the prices just skyrocket. And fundamentally, the fundamental reason for that is that AWS provide failover. So when we start our little server on the side and we run our little blog, or we create a WordPress site on a sort of a hosted environment somewhere, we think it's never going to go down. And for us, if it goes down, it's no big deal. That's okay. The site will just be out of action for a few hours or whatever. But the customers that Amazon serve, and they tell you, listen, we don't take this thing down. Like a database in Amazon, a managed database is basically replicated permanently. So if the one, and that's replicated across to what they call availability zones. And availability zones have to have separate power, for example. They're within the same data center or the same region, but they're potentially at different sites. So your database is constantly replicated across. So the amount of sort of failover and management that you get for the extra price is why you pay the extra price. But it's, and it's only when it's a fair point, and only when at a certain point, and also the other thing is the trend even on Amazon I'm finding is that the developer time is expensive. So developers are expensive resources, and we don't want to waste their time doing deployments, and we don't want to waste their time, managing a server, which is why you use Amazon or a cloud provider, because you don't want to manage stuff. You don't want to get up in the middle of the night and get called and somebody says that somebody pulled the plug on the main server. If you run your own, for example, you don't want to be doing that. So that's why you want to move to, and you have a point. You're going to have to figure out at what scale do you switch over. You need to sort of asking those questions and deciding for yourself. Yeah, but because cost management on Amazon is a challenge, and it's not an easy thing to do.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. That was absolutely fascinating and very well presented.
If you have any more questions, hit me up. I can help you with Amazon AWS as well if you want. If you, I'd love to get back into AWS. I'm actually on C# at the moment, and I've managed to avoid getting into Azure so far. I've got other people that do that, but they don't use CloudFormation, so it's like, whoa, you like literally click deploy from their computer. That just scares me.